Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. This time, we're taking on self-discovery and how we can unlock our potential. We're going to be looking at, a couple of different sources here.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we've got this classic psychology book, Carl Rogers, on Becoming a Person, which came out, back in 1961.
Yeah.
And we're also going to be looking at something very, very 21st century, a business plan for a venture called Selfology.
Interesting combination. How do those even connect?
Well, that's what we're going to find out.
Right.
It's kind of like they're both speaking to this deep human desire, to grow, to improve, to become like the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's through therapy or maybe even laser treatments, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're here to unpack in this deep dive. We'll be looking at the core concepts from Rogers' work and seeing how they show up in the Selfology business.
It's like a plan.
So let's start with Carl Rogers. One of his big ideas is this concept of the fully functioning person. It's not about, being perfect. It's more about like a way of being.
Yeah, he describes these individuals as being really open to experience, living in the moment, authentically, trusting their own judgment, and having a sense of freedom in making choices.
So it's less about like checking off boxes and more about like cultivating certain qualities that lead to a more fulfilling life.
Exactly. And here's where things get even more interesting. Rogers believed that personal growth doesn't happen in isolation. He emphasized the importance of relationships, especially what he called helping relationships.
Okay, so tell me more about these helping relationships. What makes them so special?
Well, Rogers believed that to truly understand another person, you need to step into their shoes, see the world through their eyes, even risk being changed by that experience. He actually called it risky. It requires letting go of judgments and our preconceived notions.
Wow. Yeah, it really makes you think about like how often we approach interactions with our own biases, right?
It does, and it challenges us to be more present, more empathetic, more open to truly connecting with others.
Now, did Rogers believe that everyone wants to grow and change?
Absolutely. He saw this inherent motivation for change, he called it, within each person.
Mm-hmm.
A drive towards self-actualization, like a powerful force.
Yeah.
He even compared it to like a mainspring of life. It might be buried by our experiences, but never extinguished.
That's a powerful image, like a wellspring of potential inside each of us.
Precisely. And his research showed that certain qualities in these helping relationships were key. Qualities like genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathy. Think of them as the fertile ground where personal growth can flourish.
So it's not just about having people around, it's about the quality of those connections, the feeling of being truly seen, right?
Yes, exactly. And what's fascinating is that these findings, they have implications beyond therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They influence fields like education, business, and of course, personal relationships.
Right. It really makes you wonder how many of our own relationships actually embody those qualities.
It does.
And how we can, foster them more intentionally.
That's a great question to think about. And here's another interesting idea from Rogers. He saw the good life not as like a destination. It's more like a process, an ongoing process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He observed that people in therapy, they often shift away from, living by the expectations of others and move towards embracing their own unique, ever-changing selves.
Like we're constantly evolving, right? Shedding those old layers and discovering new parts of ourselves as we go.
Right. And trying to fit into, someone else's mold, it kind of stifles that process.
Absolutely. So this brings us to where we can start connecting Rogers' work to the Selfology business plan. They seem to be tapping into this idea of self-actualization, but in a more like concrete way, right?
Yes, very much so. They're taking these complex psychological ideas and applying them in a market-driven context.
Okay. So how does this Selfology concept actually play out? What are they offering that connects to Rogers?
Well, they provide a range of services like laser treatments, massage therapy. They even have alternative therapies like acupuncture.
Interesting.
All of it is geared towards, enhancing well-being and self-esteem.
So while Rogers was like deep in the human psyche, Selfology is more focused on the outer layers.
You could say that, yes.
But they're both trying to tap into that drive for improvement we talked about.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it raises a really interesting question. How much of our drive for self-improvement is actually about internal shifts versus external changes?
That is a good question. And it's something we're going to have to explore more deeply. I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical about how like laser treatments fit into Rogers' idea of becoming a person?
Yeah, I can understand that. It's a valid point. And it raises some fascinating questions about the tension between scientific advancements and personal experience, something that Rogers himself actually grappled with.
Oh, really? Tell me more about how he viewed that tension.
Well, he saw this inherent paradox in trying to understand ourselves. On the one hand, we have science with its, objective observations, data, and all that. And on the other, we have the subjective reality of our inner world, our thoughts, our feelings, and experiences. He argued that we can't just ignore either perspective.
Okay, so it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about, finding a way to hold both of those truths.
Precisely. Think about it like trying to understand what makes you, you. We can look at your genetic makeup, your personality traits based on a test. That's the science part.
Right.
But then there's also that intangible essence of who you are.
Yeah.
The unique way you experience the world. That can't be fully captured by data.
Yeah, I get it.
That's the tension Rogers highlights. He urged us to be open to both. The objective and the subjective, recognizing the richness and complexity of being human.
Okay, so how does this tension play out in the context of something like selfology? Because they're using scientific advancements like laser technology to address very personal desires, like the desire to look better, to feel better.
It's a perfect example of that interplay. And it brings up the question, how do we ensure that these advancements are actually used to empower people and not just feed into those societal pressures and insecurities?
That is a big question, and one we'll definitely be exploring more as we dig deeper into selfology and its implications. But before we get there, what's standing out to you so far in Rogers' work? Anything resonating with you personally?
Honestly.
Yeah.
His emphasis on understanding, and the power of those helping relationships. It's making me reflect on my own interactions and how I can be, more present, more empathetic in my own relationships.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm right there with you. I think for me, it's that idea of the good life as a process, not a destination. It's incredibly freeing. It takes the pressure off of achieving some perfect state.
Right.
And it allows us to just embrace that journey of becoming.
I love that. And I think it sets the stage perfectly for us to really explore selfology. We'll be looking at how they actually translate these ideas into, a business model, and if they manage to capture that essence of Rogers' vision. Welcome back to our deep dive into self-discovery.
We've been exploring Carl Rogers' work.
Yeah, his ideas about the fully functioning person, those helping relationships, and that concept of the good life as a journey, not a destination.
Right. And we just started to touch on this business plan for selfology.
Yeah, this modern venture that seems to be taking inspiration from Rogers.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into selfology, shall we? And see how it actually aligns with Rogers' vision.
Yeah, from what we've gathered so far, it looks like selfology offers a pretty wide range of services.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all aimed at, boosting well-being and self-esteem. Things like laser treatments for skin rejuvenation, massage therapy for relaxation, even alternative therapies like acupuncture and aromatherapy.
It's an interesting mix. I have to admit, I'm still kind of struggling with how some of these services, especially the ones that are really focused on physical appearance, how they connect to Rogers' emphasis on authenticity and self-acceptance.
Yeah, no, it's a valid struggle, and I think it really gets to the heart of a key tension that we keep coming back to in this deep dive.
Okay.
That tension between, external changes and real internal growth.
Right. Because Rogers was all about moving away from living by those, those expectations that other people put on us, embracing our true selves.
Exactly. And it's easy to see how striving for a certain physical appearance, which is so often dictated by, societal norms, how that could clash with that idea.
Totally. So how does selfology address this potential conflict? Are they just catering to those societal pressures, or are they offering something deeper?
Well, they try to bridge that gap. They frame their services as ways to enhance self-esteem and well-being, which they argue can then pave the way for personal growth.
Okay, so they're not just saying, come here and we'll erase your wrinkles or we'll make you look thinner. They're saying these services can help you, feel better about yourself, which might then give you the confidence to make other positive changes.
Yeah, that's the argument they're making.
But isn't there a danger in commodifying self-improvement this way? Does Selfology risk turning personal growth into just another product to consume?
It's a valid concern, for sure. And I think that's where individual awareness and intentionality becomes so important.
So you mean it's up to each person to decide why they're choosing those services and whether it's, whether it actually aligns with their own values and goals?
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, am I doing this to conform to some external ideal, or am I doing this for me to feel more confident and comfortable in my own skin?
It's that internal locus of evaluation that Rogers emphasized.
Yeah.
That ability to trust our own judgment and make choices based on what truly resonates with us.
Exactly. And that's such a crucial element that we have to bring to any self-improvement endeavor, whether it's therapy, a selfology treatment, or any other path that we choose.
So how does Selfology incorporate this idea of self-reflection and intentionality into their business model? Do they?
Well, from what I can see, their main focus is on providing those services. But they do emphasize creating a welcoming and supportive environment, for their clients, a space where people feel seen and heard.
So do you think those helping relationship qualities that Rogers identify, genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathy, could those actually play a role even in a business setting like this?
Absolutely. Even in a setting that's focused on those external transformations, the quality of the interactions, the feeling of being truly accepted and supported, that can make a huge difference.
So it's not just about the treatments themselves, it's about the human connection that surrounds them.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Rogers' view of the good life as an ongoing process. Selfology seems to be offering like a snapshot in time, a way to enhance well-being or self-esteem at a specific moment. But what happens after that?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Does Selfology actually provide the tools and the support for lasting growth, or is it just a temporary fix?
And that's something we'll be looking at more in the last part of our deep dive. We'll be exploring the potential limitations of Selfology, but also its potential to be like a catalyst for deeper, more sustainable personal growth.
Okay, I'm excited to get into that. But before we move on, I'm curious what's resonating with you about this whole Selfology thing.
Honestly, I'm intrigued by their attempt to bring Rogers' ideas about self-actualization into a more accessible, like a mainstream setting. It raises some really interesting questions about how we as a society, approach personal growth and what role businesses can play in that journey.
I think it's also prompting us to examine the potential pitfalls of, commodifying self-improvement. Like where do we draw that line between self-care and just, buying into those external pressures?
Right. And how do we make sure that, these advancements in technology and wellness practices are used to actually empower individuals, not just perpetuate those unrealistic ideals?
These are definitely questions worth thinking about.
Yeah. And as we head into that final part of our deep dive, I will leave you with a thought to consider.
Oh, yeah.
If Rogers is right about the potential for even organizations to become more, fully functioning, what might that actually look like in the context of a business like Selfology? Could they create a model that not only provides those services, but also empowers individuals to become more self-aware, more connected, and ultimately more fully functioning in their own lives?
That's a powerful challenge. It suggests that Selfology could be more than just a business, but a force for good.
Exactly, and it's a challenge that I think we can all take to heart, whether we're running a business or leading a team or just navigating our own personal growth.
Absolutely. So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, keep that challenge in mind, everyone. We're going to be exploring that potential for Selfology to become, more than just a business, but a catalyst for positive change. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have. We've been looking at Carl Rogers' ideas, that fully functioning person, the power of understanding and empathy. Oh, and that good life is a process thing.
Right. And we've also dug into this Selfology business plan, seeing how it could be empowering, but also, maybe play into some of those societal pressures that Rogers was talking about.
Exactly. And we left off with a big question, didn't we?
We did.
Could a business like Selfology actually become a force for good, a
Yeah.
catalyst for change, maybe even beyond just personal change?
It's a bold idea. And like we're saying, there's some tricky parts to figure out.
For sure. Like that tension we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Focusing on those external transformations versus that genuine internal growth.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that really stood out to me when we were looking at their business plan, they talk about creating this supportive environment, but there's not a lot about the process of personal growth, which Rogers was all about.
Yeah, it's like they're offering this menu of services like zap your wrinkles, reduce stress, boost your self-esteem, but without really acknowledging that real growth, it's a journey.
Right.
Full of, ups and downs, not a quick fix.
It is. It's a journey that often requires us to, face some hard truth about ourselves, challenge those beliefs that are holding us back, step outside those comfort zones. It's not always about feeling good, right? It's about becoming more, more whole, more ourselves,
Right. So how do you balance that with a business model that's basically about, selling something?
That's the tricky part. And I think it really comes back to intentionality, you know, both for the business and for the people who are going there.
So Selfology needs to be careful about the message they're sending, making sure they're not just feeding into that pressure to fit in.
Yeah, exactly. If they're just, pushing themselves as a quick fix, then they're missing the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they can, shift their focus to really empowering people, to go on their own journey of self-discovery,
Right.
become more self-aware, really cultivate those helping relationships we talked about, then maybe they can create something really powerful.
Yeah. It's like they could become a guide, not just a service provider.
I like that. And that guidance, it could look like a lot of things, right? Offering workshops, classes, bringing mindfulness into their services, creating, opportunities for people to connect with each other, build a community. Those could be ways to make real change.
For sure. It's about creating a space where people feel safe to explore, not just change how they look.
Yeah. Almost like weaving Rogers' idea of that helping relationship into the business itself.
Exactly. And if they can do that, who knows? Maybe you could inspire other businesses, other organizations to do the same.
It's pretty amazing to think about. What if more businesses started thinking about their work as not just about profit, but about contributing to, a world where people feel empowered to live more authentically,
It is. And it starts with just being aware, right? Asking those tough questions, being willing to challenge how things are done. Rogers' work, it reminds us that we all have that capacity for growth and change.
Yeah.
And we can choose to use what we know to make the world a better place.
That's powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your final takeaway for our listeners? What do you hope they take away from this?
I hope they remember that, it's okay to embrace those paradoxes. We live in a world that's complicated and full of contradictions. We have so much information, but sometimes we feel, lost. We want to be authentic, but we're constantly being told who to be and how to look.
Yeah, it's a lot to figure out.
It is, but Rogers, he gives us like a compass. He encourages us to be open, to trust ourselves, to cultivate empathy, and to embrace that journey of becoming.
And to remember that we don't have to do it alone.
Exactly. We can connect, we can build community, we can support each other, and we can create a world that reflects what we really value.
I love that. And I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into self-discovery. We'll see you next time.